Again, I'm Karen Daniel and about to interview Janis Conway. First, I want to preface this a little bit of why I'm even doing an interview. Originally, when David and Mike and Lynn started this project and the rest of the folks here at the Centreville Press, they began setting up interviews with various and sundry people within the community that it had some kind of connection with the tornado of 1973. When I saw the list of who they were interviewing, I kind of claimed a couple of the people, mostly because I know them well and I've heard stories from them previously. I interviewed Phil for that reason because we are good friends with Phil and Jenny, and I felt like I already kind of knew what to ask him. Janis and I have a significant connection in that Janis and Jerry are my son's in-laws. So Janis and I have talked over the years a little bit about what Brent was like before the tornado and a little bit of what she experienced the day of the tornado. So that being said, Janis, you just kind of introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your heritage, who your family is that was established in Brent.
Okay, I'm Janis Conway. My maiden name was Ward. My dad and my uncles and previously my granddad owned Ward Mercantile, which we say is the precursor of the Walmart.
Yes, exactly.
It was a large general store with a little bit of everything in it. And my mother's parents were named Young. They were from the Harrisburg area. So I grew up here. I'm still here. I left for a little while, but we were back, and I happened to be here in Centreville when the tornado hit.
So now the wards that were down in the Abercrombie community, they were connected with you as well? Was that
Yes,
grandparents?
that was my grandmother's home growing up.
Okay.
And so they had kept that. My dad and my uncles kept that. And so they had a farm down there and ran it for many years.
And your mother was?
My mother was David and Julia Young's daughter, and they were from Harrisburg. They had a farm and a general store down there.
And that was Catherine, and she was a Young from Harrisburg?
Yes,
is that right? Okay.
That's right.
And she married your dad?
My dad's Ralph Ward.
Okay. And you have one brother, Ralph?
Right.
So did you and
I had
Ralph?
one brother. And a sister that died before I was born.
Oh, that's
I never
right.
forget Terry Lane.
I forgot that. I had forgotten you told me about that before. Where exactly did you live when you and Ralph were young?
We lived in Brent, a block off of the main street, kind of across from the Brent Baptist Church, about a block away from there.
On the same street where Joanne met us?
A block over from Joanne.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that house still there? Okay.
Yes, it's still there.
All right.
My grandparents were right next door, and that house is still there too.
Okay. All right, let's go back to the town itself. Ward Mercantile was run by your grandparents that lived right there?
Yes, my granddad, Ward, had the store, and then, of course, when his sons grew and got of age, they eventually took over the store when he retired out.
Well, as you know, Dave and I are crazy about history. Tell me what the Mercantile looked like inside. When you were a child, what was it like going to the Mercantile?
Well, on the left side of the store was a good-sized grocery store, a full stock grocery store. Then the next section over was what we always call dry goods. It was clothes, shoes, anything along that line. Then the next section over was the hardware with feed and seed and nails and anything that you would find in a hardware store. Mm-hmm. And then across the street, they had the Ward Tractor Company where they worked on farm equipment, and it was also a service station when the tornado hit, that it was a full-service service station.
And that was your family's as well?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they were big business.
Right. One brother ran the tractor company and the service station, and the other two kind of ran the other part of it.
Okay. That was your dad's brothers?
Right.
How many was in that family?
Three sons,
and
yes.
they all worked right there together?
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Right.
People don't do that much anymore.
Yeah. My dad died the year before the tornado hit, but my two uncles continued to run it until the tornado hit, and then they decided not to build back.
So your dad wasn't living at the time of the tornado? Okay.
No.
But your mother was?
Right.
And she was in the home there where you
Yes.
grew up? Okay. But you had gone off to college, or?
I had gone to college and graduated and had moved back here.
And so Michael was already born?
No.
He wasn't?
He wasn't born until 75.
Okay.
And the tornado hit in 73.
Okay.
So, yes, I was living over in the subdivision near the country club when the tornado hit.
And you were home? You were not at church that night?
We were at home.
Okay.
No, we should have been. No, maybe it's a blessing we weren't at church. I don't know. Something didn't. Yeah, it was a strange day. The wind had just blown all day, but it wasn't raining. It wasn't storming, but it was just a really strange feeling wind. And we had the windows up in the house, and when the curtains started sucking into the house, or sucking out of the house, we thought there's something strange about this. And so we kind of went out in the front yard, and we thought we heard a train. We looked at each other because we used to live on a train track, and said, oh, it's just a train. And then we realized later, no, that was a tornado coming through Brent that we could hear over there. But the electricity went out, and we had to, we thought about my mom, who was at church, and I felt real safe. She was at church, and that everything would be okay, but we knew the electricity went out, so we hopped in the car to go over to be sure we were there when she got home, since she would have no lights. And we couldn't get to Brent from Centreville. We had to go all the way back through River Bend and come up.
All the way to River Bend?
And to cut across to come up from South Brent, trying to get as close as we could. Because Mother was just a few blocks from downtown.
And you were in Daly subdivision.
Right.
So when you started toward Brent, how far did you get?
I can't really remember. It seems like we got to across the bridge, and that somebody told us that it was completely blocked off, that we would not be able to get there. And we realized later, yes, it was. And so I think at that point we thought, well, we better just turn around and go. But I can't really remember. That was 50 years ago.
We've had several people say that. And one thing that they've said too, and I can understand that, it was such a difficult time for people who were actually in the church, and people who lost family or lost some of their abilities. Then it was real hard. It's hard for them to relive it, But then as we've done these interviews, I've had more people come up to me and say, well, they like hearing somebody else's story and what it was like for them. So, and some of the stuff you've said has reminded me of things that Phil said. One of the things Phil said that this was very interesting, somebody's house up on Burnt Corn near where Miss Ruth Daly lives, or did live, that the roof came up, the curtains went out, the roof set down, and the curtains are on the outside of the house.
Yes.
And so such strange phenomena.
Tornadoes will suck it out of the house. And that's not something that usually happens.
No. And another thing I had mentioned that David and I moved here 5 years after the tornado, and we hadn't experienced anything like that. So when bad weather popped up, we all went, why is everybody so scared? But when you talk to people that went through it, you really know why they're so scared.
I have to say, we went to a movie the next week. I think we had no electricity. I'm not sure, but there was some reason that we thought, let's go to a movie and just, get outside of this. And sitting in the movie, and the air conditioner came on. I nearly came out of my seat, and I thought, what was that? I think I thought a tornado was coming through. I don't know.
All those sounds
but
that
they
made
do.
you be more sensitive to what was going on. Yeah. That's
but when we got finally to down, we had to park probably near where the post office is, and walked on down and looked over and saw my dad's store completely a heap of nothing. And but I kept saying, well, my mom's at church, so she's okay. And then people started talking, because by the time we got there, it had been a little while.
You came up on the south side.
Right, on the south side.
Okay.
And they were saying, oh, Brent Baptist is gone. And that's when I just went into panic mode, and we were having to crawl over trees. I didn't care about the store being blown away. It was Sunday, nobody was there. Went by the bank, and there were troopers guarding the door because the doors had blown in on the bank. And so they were having to guard what was in the bank.
Oh, yeah.
And, climbing over trees, and got to the church and trying to ask everybody, where's my mom? Where's my mom? And nobody knew. Mm-hmm. And so finally we thought, well, we'll get to the house. And of course, climbing over trees, under trees, and got to her house, and she was at her house.
Oh, she wasn't at the
You know my mom. Yeah. She had been at the church.
Yeah.
In fact, she had been in the group that they were meeting upstairs in the church. Uh-huh. And then somebody came in and said, hey, it's really bad weather coming. We need to move everybody to the basement. And I think it was about that time it hit. Mm-hmm. Phil may have that story even better. But so they were all scrambling to get down the narrow stairway to the basement. And I remember her telling me how one of the members in the class was helping her because she didn't have a husband there. And he was a man, and he was helping her. And later we find out he thought my mother was his wife.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's why he was helping her. And his wife was over there. Where is he? And I'm not going to name names, but we have laughed. His children and I laugh about it still. That I'm real appreciative that he was helping my mama.
Yeah. So she got in her car and went home.
I don't think she could get in a car. You couldn't get on the roads. But she had probably not even driven. Yes, she had walked home and crawled over the trees, and when she got her house had a tree on top, but other than that it was okay, just no water, no electricity, but she was okay. But yes, so I think one of the members in her class even ended up losing her leg years later from it.
So when you finally got to the church and you saw the other people, there was somebody that told you she had gone on home?
I don't think anybody knew. I think she just left.
So you just had to eliminate.
Right. Somebody might have said, hey, she might have gone home when we couldn't find her anywhere.
Well, I knew Miss Catherine Brown. She was one tough lady. Anybody in the community that knew her knew how tough she was.
In fact, we tried to get her to go home with us that night, and no, she was not leaving her house. And I said, well, then we're staying here. No, you're going home. She was very self-sufficient.
Yes,
but
always was.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Back a little bit to the community area up there. So the Mercantile, what was next to the Mercantile?
The drugstore.
Okay.
It was Hunt's Drug at that point, which then Johnny Meggs, I think, ended up with. I think it was maybe his father-in-law. I'm not sure.
Because Mr. Aubrey was Mr. Aubrey's wife, Miss Jean Hunt, was connected with the Meggs somehow.
Right. I think that Betty Meggs was sisters with Jean Hunt. And, but Jean wasn't the wife that.
Okay.
I can't think of her name.
Okay. But
I'm getting old.
It was still family.
But yes, it was a family-owned drugstore that was, I think that was right next door.
The hardware store, the Bib Supply, was it there then?
It was across the street, and it was gone too.
And the Holyfield and the grocery store?
Robert Holyfield was in partnership with my dad and my uncles.
Oh, okay.
And he ended up taking over the grocery store, which is now Piggly Wiggly.
Right.
I didn't realize
that they were connected that way.
They're family almost. Yeah. Almost. Right. And Wayne lives next door to us now.
Still family, right?
Yeah, it is.
And all of that then was gone.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The whole town was just the little bit that was left standing was in shambles. Mm-hmm. Even in the bank. I was working at the bank at the time. And
so you were working there?
Yes, and I had gone up to the doors because the glasses were all blown in, and I thought, I guess I need to be sure everything's okay because I didn't see anybody else from around. And I remember the troopers didn't even question me. Maybe they knew me, I don't know. But they just let me walk in, and of course, we left papers on desk and everything. Money was locked up.
Was Mr. Billy working there then?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he was at home, I guess, down in the country.
I'm sure, and Ed Patridge was probably at his church. I don't know.
I'm assuming the word spread pretty fast, though.
It must have.
Yeah, because there were people coming from everywhere, I'm sure, trying to help. All right, back to I'm fascinated with the fact that your family had the Mercantile. When you were a child, do you remember playing in there and just being a part of it?
Oh, yes. From the time we were old enough, probably early teenage years, every holiday, busy time, they would hire us in to wrap gifts or as we got older to sell. And, it's just a fun thing. We always loved because it was a social gathering.
Right.
I mean, it was like come Saturday, everybody comes to town. And it was just a fun time and a fun place to work.
So you grew up around adults and just being a part of that adult environment. Michael's a little bit that way in that we ran a restaurant when he was a little guy, and I always wonder how he came home with so many quarters in his pocket. All he had to do was go talk to somebody and they give him a quarter.
Of course.
But yes, it was a different way of living, totally. So all of that's gone, just wiped away in a moment. And one of the things we have been asking others, and I figure you experienced that too, did you see such a camaraderie among people who were trying to help like none other?
Yes.
People coming from everywhere.
Yes. I mean, it was amazing. Even out of town, I remember the Salvation Army bringing a truck down with food, a food truck. And because people didn't have water even. And, we tried to salvage stuff from the grocery store, but most of it was just
scattered.
Yeah, it was scattered and ruined. But yeah, there were other people. I think they set up in the Brent Elementary where they brought in clothes and shoes because, a lot of families had no clothes left. They had no shoes. A lot of it was gone. But yes, it was pretty amazing, all the outside help. And I've always thought, every time I hear Salvation Army, I think, yes, they came in when there was really a need. And they do still, you know.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. That's for sure. One thing, too, Lynn's been trying to locate pictures for the little booklet that they're putting together. And I hadn't really thought about it because I kept saying, well, you should get this picture here and there and the other. But the pictures were all gone. People, I mean, even none of those were available for people to hang on to. Things were just scattered.
I know, when I find one of the old Brent, I grab hold of it because, and I do have some that are taken of the old town Brent. I try to make my kids see and vision. This is what we grew up in. This is what we had. But
and that's one of the things too. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you because one of the people, I'm not going to name a name right now, but if I say her daughter, you're probably going to figure it out. But we had asked her, and she said, well, I'm just going to say Margaret. But I just, me and Lynn both had asked Margaret, would she be willing? And she says, Karen, I'll sit there and cry. And I said, well, that's not a bad thing, but I do understand. But then I was talking to Michelle and saying I was trying to get her mom to come, and she said, well, I'll do it. And I went, okay. So, because Michelle being so connected with both of her grandparents, sets of her grandparents were involved in it. So she's heard so many stories. And one of the things in mentioning the pictures and all, I think we have a real deficit in our younger generation listening to the stories of the seniors. And I really wish that would get to be more important to them.
Yes.
And, like all of us, when the older generation's gone, then you wish you'd ask them a certain question. But Michelle has just got story upon story, so she wants to share because she's had so many, so much connection to that. So she's going to come one day. And
she'd be great.
Yeah, I think she will be too because she's like Johnny. She don't never. She's easy to talk to. After the storm, then your mom's house, it was livable. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, it was.
So she stayed on there in her house.
Yes, we just had to get the roof fixed, the tree off, and wait for electricity to come on. I can't remember how long it was, but it was an awful long time before she had power. But
what else was I going to talk to you about? One thing, I mentioned the fact that we weren't accustomed to storms like that and how it affected people. I think they got James Spann coming or going to do a Zoom interview or something with James Spann. And, I know he's told in his testimonies before how it affected him and molded his career. But,
I think I think the Brent Baptist lined him up quite a while back to get on his calendar. So I'm in hopes that he has kept that open for us.
Yes, I hope so too. Because he Yeah, it was very meaningful to him
Yes.
as just a young teenager at the time. And it, like I said, it shaped him. And but one of the things too that we've seen, as in talking to Margaret and talking to Phil and Steve and all the feelings all kind of come back when you start talking about it. You
Yeah.
start reliving that moment a little
Yes.
bit, and it can be tough for people that went through such a traumatic experience. So I get that. I understand that. But anyway, that I think it's been very meaningful to share these things so that the younger generations will capture those things that their parents went through. I know you've probably shared with Cassie and Michael a lot of stuff. Where was Ralph at the time? Was he home or was he?
I was trying to think about that when we were getting ready for today. He wasn't living here then. I think he may have been in Iowa. Yeah, he's 3 years older, and he's lived all over the world. Yeah. So I have no idea where he was that year.
Someplace at some time. Huh.
I don't remember him in the aftermath of trying to take care of Mother. And
did he come home and see all that? I guess
I don't know.
But now he grew up in the Mercantile too.
Yes,
so he would have a lot of memories.
Yeah, he even worked there some after college. Yes, but
did he go to the university too?
He went to the university and to Livingston.
Okay.
Now West Alabama. Yes. But he graduated from Livingston.
You graduated in finance and came back to work at the bank.
In accounting, yes.
Oh, okay. And so this was going to remain your home, but I think y'all moved away for a little while.
Right. I worked right out of college at the university and then came back here for a few years until they called and asked me to come back again. And I worked for a while longer and left again and went into banking.
Yeah.
I think I ended up in the bank, and I thought, well, if I'm going to work in a bank, I need to have more training. And so I went to banking school of the South for a few years in the summers and ended up there.
You said your granddad, Ward, that had the Mercantile, he had already died.
Yes.
But his wife was still living, your grandmother. Was she still living at the time of the tornado?
I'm not sure now. Okay. She was in the nursing home, and I know Pop had died earlier before Dad. I want to say she died after my daddy. Okay. I'm not positive, though.
Now, the young grandparents were down at Harrisburg?
Yes.
Did they have damage?
No.
Okay. Kathleen Mack, I think, is going to come talk one day, and she was in Harrisburg, and she said they did have some damage. It wasn't significant.
I was going to say, the Pondville area, which was just above Harrisburg, but I don't remember any damage in the woods or anything.
It seems like we're right in the path of all these tornadoes that come.
They used to say every 40 years it followed the same path, because I think it has for 2 or 3 40-year times.
Oh, really?
And so we were a little apprehensive in 2013 because we were then living in the tornado path, but that it would come through.
Well, the last few years we've had some significant stuff, so I don't think you'll be around the next 40 years.
I don't think so either. Yeah, they say in Janesville, which is across from the Sawmill restaurant, that area that it comes through. And
down there where Georgette had all the damage a little while back.
In fact, with this tornado, we were building a house down there, but we just had the basement dug, and all the trees fell away from the basement, so they didn't fall in. So we really had no damage other than we lost a lot of nice trees.
That house where Mike and Fair lived for a while? That house on the left? Oh, okay. So you were in the process of building that one. Didn't they live down there a little bit? Very short time, or maybe just Farrah did.
Yeah, Farrah did.
Yeah.
Oh, no, not that one. That's in Harrisburg.
Okay.
This was way back in the 70s.
Oh, okay.
When the tornado came through, yes.
I got you. Can you think of...
I've had more houses than you realize.
I bet you have. Can you think of anybody that you have talked with over the years about the tornado and some of the things that they experienced that you might share with us?
I remember tales, and I couldn't give you any details, but it seems like it was Jerry Powell or maybe Jack, his brother, talk about diving into the ditch there in downtown Brent when the tornado was coming through. I don't know if they had been at the church, and this might have been Phil. Phil didn't say anything about this, did he?
He was on his way to church, and he was living in a trailer up there at French's Trailer Park. He was on his way to church, and it spun his car around a couple of times, I think, but he ended up he ended up coming, I think he came on to the church in his car, but his trailer was wiped away and all that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they interviewed Jerry the other day, so I'm not sure exactly what all Jerry said. I think when all this is said and done, they'll bring all this together and we'll hear some overlapping.
Yeah.
And probably some perceptions that are a little different from one person to the other.
Probably so. I think we all saw it differently,
yes, I'm sure.
Even the ones that were in it. But
right.
Yeah, I think I hear tales about them throwing Miss Faye Didle in a car to get her to the hospital in Marion because they couldn't go anywhere else, that they could go south.
Yeah, Steve and Phil both shared all about that, and that was pretty
that's traumatic.
As well as very traumatic.
Yeah.
Just trying to get there and having people that you know in your car that you may lose before you get there. And did you have a close affiliation with any of the people who actually died in it?
No, I didn't.
Was the Mitchell man, was he...
He was in the Brent Baptist Church.
And he was a long-standing part of that Mitchell family
I think so. I didn't really know him because I had been off to college and had just moved back here in 72.
And there was
the year before.
Interesting story when you mentioned Miss Faye, too, and going to Marion was that Linda Hammett, was that her name? She was a nurse who had not been at church, but she came that night unusually. And she ended up, she was significant in saving Miss Faye's life.
I had forgotten that, but I had heard that.
So, you know,
yes,
God had his hand on everybody.
Yeah.
Or it could have been a whole lot worse.
Yes.
And I'm sure when you were chasing your mama, you were praying that God had to spare
I tell you.
I can't imagine what that was like.
And I do remember Margaret was at church that night, and it seems like she just on a whim, she was around the organ as usual, or about to set up for the organ.
Miss Dot Mitchell, that's who it was. Miss Dot Mitchell told her to get to the basement. She said, "No, I'm going to stay here by the organ and get set up." She says, "No, you're going to the basement."
Right.
And Margaret said, "You know, I guess I would have been standing there and might have not survived." So,
and that's true because that's where the brunt of it was.
Was Miss Dot Mitchell, was she kin to the Mitchell that died, or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. I remember Miss Dot. It's been a while.
I just didn't know the Mr. Mitchell that died, and so I never could connect who he was.
Right. Was there anything you want to share that I haven't covered? Because I've been just kind of...
Oh, no, this has been fun. I've enjoyed visiting with you, Karen.
Well, like I told David, I said, you know, I'm not much on interviewing, but some of these folks that you've lined up, I've heard stories from them before.
Yeah.
Phil, he shared with us a lot of stuff.
Oh, yes.
And so just the fact that I already kind of knew what to ask and things that we might cross. But like I said, my fascination with you was the fact that you were a descendant of the Ward Mercantile. And I wish so bad we had those kind of things still.
Oh, I know. That was such a fun store. Right. You could come there for anything, just like you can go to Walmart for anything, or Target, or wherever. But
you know, I remember when Phil was being interviewed, I asked him, I said, "Phil, can you think of anything that you would like to see back like it was before the tornado?" He said, "Everything. I want everything back like it was."
Yes, the old drugstore, and I mean, it was just fun. You know, we grew up having GAs in the afternoons after school at the church, and our treat was always to walk down to the drugstore, and we'd get a dime limeade. Yeah. And it was, you know, just always a gathering place in there.
Now it's coffee shops.
Yeah, so. It is.
Janis, can I ask you something?
You can.
If there was something, of course, there was a renovation of the town of Brent that occurred after the tornado, but I think there may have been something else that occurred after the tornado, a sense of community and oneness that I've never seen in another community quite as strong as I think I see it in the community of Brent, Alabama. There's a bond there that probably outsiders wouldn't understand. And I just find that remarkable. And I think it's important in this day and age with all our social media and the sense and the things that we see around us as the old timers in town of the community sort of disintegrating in some way. We want to try to encourage the younger generations coming up. Yeah, you may have a smartphone, but that doesn't make you smart. And you may think you have social media, but in reality, you don't really ever get to know who your neighbors are until you look them in the eye, spend some time with them like you ladies have done right now. You spend time, and then you find out what's really important is your relationships, not how much money you make, not how much career you've had, but more importantly, it's your friends and your family that are your community, and you need to treasure them while you have them. If that's something that come out of that tornado and people could get that out of that tornado, then that's a good thing. And I think the people of Brent, I've seen that in them, and I admire it in them.
That's good to know that you see that, because I think we do feel it. And
I think I see it. I've seen it since I've been here. I've picked up on a sense of community and oneness. We're all one. If you talk bad about one of us, you're talking about all of us.
That's true.
Phil shared something I thought was interesting that Mr. Tom Green that passed away in it at his home. There had been young people from Marion or that direction show up asking about Mr. Tom. And Phil said that he told the young man that Mr. Tom had died in the storm. And he realized later that was his grandson he was talking to.
Oh,
and
really?
He said to this day, though, when I see him, and he said, I see him fairly regular, he said, I have to remind him that was me that day. And I didn't.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
And that has really stuck with Phil.
Yeah.
So, we've got little snippets that's popped up in this.
And it's so, it's still sad to see downtown Brent, because it rebuilt to some degree, but it's
nothing like
it's still lacking. We had an old hotel in downtown Brent, and I can remember as a kid, going in the lobby of that old downstairs hotel. We had a barber shop. We had a lot of things. We had H&S, auto. We had the Brent service station, where my Uncle Joe raised so many young men up in. And, it was a thriving little town. And then, of course, we had the Ward Mercantile, but we also had Bibb's Supply, and there was another large store. Brent Mercantile maybe was the name of it. But there were 3, large stores in downtown. They were basically the same thing, all in downtown Brent. And it's just gone now, It's sad.
Life that is no
it
more.
is. And we all travel out of town for so much that we're not so close-knit as we used to be.
We're on the go constantly.
Yes.
If we're not traveling out to go out to eat, we're going to some grandkids' baseball game.
Oh, yes. They're all over, are they?
Yes, they are. So, well, thanks, Janis. I appreciate you letting me be the one to interview you. And I'm thankful that we are family, that your daughter is my daughter-in-law, and that's meaningful. And we've had a lot of times to share together.
We do. Yes. And a lot more.
Yes, we do. They just keep coming.
I know it. They do.
Keep adding on them extra ones, too. All right. Well, thanks for being here today. You got anything else you want to finish up with?
I think that's it.
All right. We're good, Janis.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.